So on Saturday, Alabama waltzed into Death Valley and absolutely destroyed the LSU Tigers 42-13. But that score doesn't tell the complete story because quite frankly, the game wasn't even that close, and today, well, we need to break it down. We need to talk about the tremendous growth Alabama has shown this season. We need to dive into what the difference was on Saturday, and we also need to talk about two things I saw from LSU that tell me LSU is burning, and we need to jump into it all. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Y for yes, N for no. Were you surprised that Alabama dog walked LSU in their home stadium? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And I think the area I want to start with is talking about Alabama's defense against this LSU offense. Because the one thing I don't want to see Alabama fans fall into this Monday and this week is telling the story that LSU's offense was never very good. Because quite frankly, one, not only is it not true, two, it undermines the incredible performance Alabama's defense had. It undermines the growth we've seen from the players on the field to the leaders in the locker room and the coaches on the sideline. This was a good LSU offense. They've got really good pieces. Caden Durham is young, but I think he's going to be a really good running back and a guy I'm excited to watch develop throughout his college career. They've got really good wide receivers. Their offensive line was a preseason Joe Moore Award-winning capable offensive line. Garrett Nussmeier's in his first year starting, but he has a high ceiling. He's finding his footing, but he has thrown for a lot of yards against good defenses. The story isn't that LSU's offense wasn't that good. The story is Alabama's defense has found their footing. And we talked about this after the Mizzou win. That Alabama had been growing. They'd been getting better. But there are certain moments within a college football season that can change the trajectory of what a team is doing. In my opinion, the fourth down stop against Missouri was a catalyst for Alabama. We've talked about that moment ad nauseum. I'm not going to dive into it today. You know how I feel about it. If Missouri would have scored, it meant nothing, but it meant something to Alabama. That was a moment that has propelled this team into another level. It was a buy-in by the offense. It was a buy-in by the defense. It was a buy-in by the coaches that has allowed their confidence to really be on full display. And I think Kane Womack deserves a ton of credit because he has found his footing as Alabama's defensive coordinator. He came in, there was a total scheme change for Alabama. He was still getting acclimated to his personnel. But as the season has continued, his versatility has started to show in his play calling. We are starting to see more of that first half defense that we saw against Georgia in terms of being confident with walking guys up to the line, dropping them, showing the quarterback several different things. One of the things I loved that Alabama did against Garrett Nussmeier and LSU on Saturday is they showed them a pretty similar look multiple times and did multiple different things out of it. And if you're an opposing quarterback and you see that, a defense showing you something similar, not necessarily that it's identical, but similar, whether that's similar in formation or similar in principle, if you see this multiple times and then you see multiple different results, you have no idea what's coming. You don't know if they're blitzing. You don't know who's blitzing because sometimes they sent everybody. Sometimes it was a delayed blitz. Sometimes nobody blitzed. You have no idea what to key in on. And it really puts quarterbacks in a tough situation. That's exactly what we saw with Garrett Nussmeier. That is 100% what we saw with Garrett Nussmeier. Also, whenever we're talking about the evolution of this defense, we must talk about the secondary. This is a secondary that's incredibly young, but man, have they grown. This secondary has become a really fun part of this Alabama team to watch. The talent is impossible to ignore. And I think one of the names we have got to give a lot of credit to, even though I think all credit should be given to every single member of this defense, certainly of the secondary given their youth. But Bray Hubbard comes in for Keon Sabb, and he has been playing unbelievable football. Personally, I know that being a coach in the preseason had to be really fun when you're sitting there looking and saying, we have Sab and Hubbard at this position. I can imagine those were some really fun practices. Because when I'm watching him play, he's ready for the moment. The moment is not too big for him. He's making big plays. He's smacking people on the football field. He's getting interceptions. In fact, second interception in 2 games. The guy's playing high-quality football. That was really impressive to see. Another person on this defense that I thought played incredibly was Jahad Campbell. Jahad Campbell, if we are giving an award to a member of both the offense or the defense, for me, I would have to give it to Jahad Campbell. Jahad Campbell finished the game with 12 tackles, 6 of which were solos. He had 1.5 sacks. He had 3 tackles for loss. He had 1 pass defended, and he had 1 forced fumble. That is an insane stat line. And I think my favorite thing about Jahad Campbell is versatility. And if you've been a member of this channel, you've heard me talk about this time and time again, especially when we're talking about recruits. If a recruit has the ability to be versatile and do multiple things, I think that makes it really interesting for a defensive coordinator to be able to maximize the potential of the defense. And with all of the good news comes bad news. Q Robinson sustained an injury, and per reports, he is going to be out for the rest of the season, and that's super unfortunate because this was a guy that was really putting it all together this year. I mean, I'd said time and time again, I love the depth at Wolf. I thought he was the best Wolf. The growth we saw from Q-Rob this year was undeniable, having an incredible year, being able to generate quarterback pressures, being able to get home, and to see him go down with an injury at the back end of a season that he's playing so well in, that's heartbreaking. That's absolutely heartbreaking. And I wish nothing but the best for him, his family, and a speedy recovery. But he had a great year this year. He really did. He absolutely did. Stepping up for guys like Dallas Turner who have exited and gone to the NFL, Q-Rob steps in and only showed patience by waiting his turn when the room in front of him was incredibly loaded. When Alabama kept recruiting 5-star guys at that position, he was patient. He sat back, he learned, and he created value for himself, and it was on full display this year. I think that this is a guy that Alabama will miss, quite frankly. I mean, he played great football. The question becomes, what does Alabama do with his injury? Well, there's a reason I slotted this where I did as soon as we got done talking about Jahad Campbell's versatility. Because one of my favorite packages Alabama has ran that utilizes Jahad Campbell is putting him at that wolf and allowing 0 and 15 to man the middle of the defense. Because then you have a lot of speed, athleticism, and nasty intent on this defense. And speaking of 0, his interception was key for Alabama. But if you aren't in that package, if you do have 11 at his traditional linebacker role, you also have Quay Russaw, you have Yanze Pierre. You can get a younger guy like a Noah Carter coming up. I've seen a lot of people say you could put Keon Keeley there, and possibly, but he has transitioned his body for a different position. I'm interested to see what they do, but you do have options. But even though you have options, it doesn't really answer how sad it is for Q-Rob, and I'm really saddened to see this injury and praying that he will have a speedy recovery. Let's talk about Alabama's offense versus LSU's defense, because Alabama fans, if you want to talk about a portion of the LSU team that just isn't that great, it's their defense. That's an acceptable conversation. I don't want to see it talked about with the offense because that really undermines what Alabama's defense did. But two things can be true. That Alabama's offense found something in this game that they have been searching for. And LSU's defense hasn't been that vaunted unit. But even then, it was raining. It was a downpour. I loved what I saw from Jalen Milroe in the passing game. He went 12 of 16 for just over 100 yards, 2 drops. I think both of those drops would have resulted in real big plays. One of them would have been a touchdown. The other, Kendrick Law coming across the middle, hit him right in the chest, but it was wet. I mean, this is a situation where it's, this is an understandable drop. The ball's real wet. Completely understandable. But when we're looking at what Jalen Milroe did in the passing game and why I thought he had a good day, even though he didn't throw for 400 yards, he took what the defense gave him. He was patient, but he was purposeful. There were times where, yeah, maybe you could argue, oh, if he would have waited for a second or two more, he could have hit a guy downfield. The problem with that is all I've heard from so many people is that he holds onto the ball for too long. So in my opinion, Jalen Milroe showed a lot of good stuff as a quarterback throwing the football on Saturday. If a guy was open, he took the opportunity. He lived to fight another down. His mindset was, let's just march down the field. It was very similar to what we saw against Georgia, just without as many opportunities. But it was a very impressive showing considering it was raining that hard. He not only threw the ball well, his decision-making was really, really good. But then we talk about the thing that Alabama found, and that's their running game. Because Alabama ran the ball right down LSU's throat, to the tune of 311 yards. Granted, LSU only had 343 yards total, and a lot of that came at the very end of the game when Alabama's starters weren't in. Alabama really held LSU to under 300 yards. We're going to unpack that here in just a second. Stick around, because I heard something that shows me LSU is burning, and I want to talk about it. Jalen Milroe had 185 yards on the ground. He couldn't be stopped. And we knew this was going to be the difference in this game. So Alabama's offense absolutely dominated LSU's defense. And yes, it wasn't a defense that was superb, but Alabama found something that they had been looking for all season, and that was a running game. Because even though Milroe had 185 yards, the running backs played well. The offensive line ran block really well. And this is something that we've seen start showing its head here recently. This isn't just relegated to LSU. So I'm incredibly proud of how the team performed, and this was a massive win that keeps Alabama in the playoff hunt. But now, we need to talk about two things I saw from LSU that if you're an LSU fan, you should be a little off-put by. First and foremost is the fact that by the end of that game, it was loud when LSU's offense had the ball, not Alabama's. Why? Because LSU fans straight up walked out. Bama took over the stadium. I don't mean they beat you in the stadium. I mean they literally took it over. It became louder when LSU had the ball than when Alabama had the ball, because Alabama shut them up. They sent them packing. And the second one was Brian Kelly absolutely crying after the game and during the game, because there is a clip where, listen, I'm no lip reader, but it really looks like he's yelling at the ref, complaining that they're blitzing 7 guys and the game's over. Well, Brian Kelly, if you're so mad at that, why are you, in the waning moments of the game, less than 2 minutes to go, doing nothing but throwing the ball down the field with your starters in, trying to get some consolation prize touchdown to make you feel like you didn't get your ass kicked in the manner you got your ass kicked? But then you have the gall to say and complain and cry about, oh, well, they were blitzing 7 guys. You have your starters in. Is the game of football not about letting the other team score, or did I wake up in an alternate reality? And if anybody says his complaining wasn't about Alabama blitzing, he didn't like that they were trying to hit his quarterback late in the game, then pull the quarterback out of the game, because you weren't winning. You were getting destroyed. If you as an offense say, we are going to try and score, I don't care if I'm up by 150. I, as a defense, am going to say, try. And I'm going to try and stop you. Why is it that he gets the pass of trying to play until the whistle? But when Alabama's playing until the whistle, heating his quarterback up, by the way, all the starters for LSU still in, we're talking second and third stringers for Alabama, now it's a problem. Now we don't want to play football. That's a quitter's mentality. That's a loser's mentality, and that's soft. I usually don't go hard on things like this, but that is soft as can be. That is real soft, and because of that, certain LSU host. LSU is burning. That's about it. See ya.